The pandemic didn't really create virtual lawyering. It really just accelerated it. And we all know this now. What would have happened eventually just pretty much happened overnight. So visibility creates accountability. And that's one of the nice things about a lot of these tools that we have. The more visible I can be for my clients and the more I can show them where we are in the process and how things are moving along, the more they're going to trust me and the more I'm going to be held accountable. This is a way for you and a time for you to start to build a firm intentionally about not just where you live, but who you're serving, how you want to serve, who you want to serve, and what that can look like in a way that might look a little bit different from the past.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us for another Justia webinar. My name's Nina, and I'll be the moderator for today. Now, to kick things off, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, Laura Cowan. Laura Cowan is an estate planning attorney and the founder of the law office of Laura Cowan, based in New York. She's also the creator of the 2-hour lifestyle lawyer program, which has trained more than 500 attorneys nationwide to launch and grow streamlined, profitable estate planning practices. Laura began her career in public accounting as a certified public accountant before graduating from the University of Minnesota Law School and building her own virtual practice from the ground up. The webinar that you're about to watch will be approximately 60 minutes. And once the webinar is complete, or once the presentation is complete, rather, Laura will be taking questions from the audience. So you will be able to submit your questions by clicking the Q&A button in the control panel at the bottom of your screen, sending them in there, and we will address those once the slide deck has been wrapped up. Now, without further ado, here is Laura to discuss the future of law, managing a remote practice.
Thank you, Nina. So welcome, everyone. This is the presentation on the future of law, managing a remote practice. My name is Laura Cowan, and I'm an estate planning attorney based in New York City. And I'm going to be sharing all of my tips and tricks today about how to start a remote practice, how to manage a remote practice, all of the things that you need to know about running a law firm virtually, which is something I've been doing myself now for about 10 years. So I'm sorry, 5 years. 5 years. So we're going to be talking about what it really takes to be successful as a virtual law firm owner, how virtual lawyering has changed and evolved, and how it's here to stay and why it's here to stay. And then we'll be talking about the ethical rules that we need to follow when practicing virtually. And we'll also talk about how you can create a really great client experience if you're practicing remotely as well. So we have a lot of different things to touch on today. By the end of the webinar, hopefully you'll have a really clear picture of what's working now in the virtual world and what kind of opportunity and possibility there is. I'm a big fan of looking at things from a position of opportunity and possibility. And I know that this is a subject that might make some people nervous, just thinking about how quickly things are changing and all of that. But I think there's going to be a lot of potential in the future for lawyers. And so I want to touch on that as we go through the slides today. So I'll be talking for about 60 minutes, as Nina said, and then we'll have questions at the end. I want to share a little bit about my background because my background is actually pretty relevant to what we're talking about today. I went to law school a little bit later in life. I was 35 when I went to law school. And prior to that, I worked as a CPA. I worked on Wall Street, Ernst & Young, some other places like that. And I'm now licensed in both New York and Minnesota. And I opened my practice 10 years ago, right out of law school. And to say that I didn't know what I was doing is an understatement. It was all brick and mortar back then. And then I turned it virtual 5 years later during COVID. And so I've now been practicing virtually for 5 years doing estate planning. I founded my program, the 2-hour lifestyle lawyer, in 2022, which trains lawyers how to run a virtual estate planning practice. And I have a book that came out this year that I'm going to mention on this call because it's actually interesting, I think, for all lawyers, not just estate planning lawyers. But it's called Lifestyle Lawyer Revolution. You can get it on Amazon. And it talks a lot about the practice of law post-COVID, how it's changed, the opportunities that I think are there. And it's a nice book to kind of get you through rethinking maybe what it means to be a lawyer in 2025, 2026. So that's a little bit about me. And it's one of the reasons that I'm here talking about this today, because I've actually implemented what I'm speaking about. So I'm going to take a big picture look at the landscape. What are we talking about here with remote practice? What's going on? What's changed in the past 5 years? And then we're going to take a deeper dive into 5 specific areas: the ethics and the compliance, the technology, staffing, your client experience, and business models and profitability. And we're going to take a deep dive into each one of these. There's a lot of different things that we could touch upon, but I think that these are 5 areas just to get you going, to start thinking about what it could be like having a virtual practice. And then we're going to wrap up with where I think the profession is heading, and how you can position yourself to be in a good position for the future of law. So that's what we'll be talking about. We will have time for Q&A at the end, and I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's questions. So let's look at the big picture. Everything changed during COVID. How long have we been saying this? It's been 5 years now, 5 years since everything changed. The pandemic didn't really create virtual lawyering. It really just accelerated it. And we all know this now. What would have happened eventually just pretty much happened overnight. So what started as a temporary thing is now permanent. It's permanent in how clients see us. It's permanent in how we react and interact with our clients. It's permanent in how our clients expect us to show up. So what we've discovered in the past 5 years is that practicing remotely really can impact your effectiveness, your profitability, your flexibility. There's a lot of things that are great about practicing remotely, not the least of which is we don't have a big, huge overhead now because we're paying for a big office space. So we have learned a lot of great things about practicing remotely. Our clients have learned a lot of great things about practicing remotely as well, or at least working with a lawyer who's practicing remotely is what I should say. The demand is there. Your entrepreneurial clients, your parents, your young families, they all are very comfortable being on Zoom. And so they're used to this kind of, we want to get things done via Zoom. So the demand is there. And what we're really seeing now is a rise of both hybrid and online only firms. It would be a great question for the Q&A. Does anyone have only an in-person firm? I would be interested to hear this. The lawyers in our community, we've probably got about 600 now, and I don't know if there's anyone who has fully in-person. Hybrid and fully virtual is what we're really seeing in the future. So these are the 2 models: a hybrid firm, keeping a local presence. Maybe you do some meetings in person, but everything else is virtual. My firm is hybrid. I do all of my meetings up until the signing ceremony virtually. And then I meet my clients in person for the signing. That's what I've decided works best for my estate planning practice. Maybe it'll be similar for you. Some firms, and it's possible now with estate planning and trademark law and some of these other areas, you can be fully remote. You don't have to be sitting in the state that you're working in. You don't have to actually ever meet with clients in person if you don't want to. And a lot of firms are moving towards this model as well. It's just so profitable with the low overhead. And it also is something that a lot of our clients are looking for. Now, every now and then I'll get someone who says, but I like meeting with people in person. And if that's you, that's great. There's nothing wrong with having a hybrid firm or meeting with people in person because that's what you like. I think that's one of the nice things about this new model for the future anyway, is that we can pick. If you really like to be in person, then you can meet people in person. And if you prefer to be on Zoom, then that's an option as well. The point here is that the firms who thrive in the future, in my opinion, are going to be the ones that are able to blend efficiency, and efficiency is tech, AI, working remotely, etc., with empathy. And maybe that will look different depending on where you are, what kind of law you practice, that kind of thing. But I think that clients going forward are going to want a lawyer who both doesn't have their heads stuck in the sand about what AI is about and what technology is about and where the future is headed, but also brings that one-to-one personal human contact that I think that you can get via Zoom, just like you can get in person. The real opportunity now is to start designing your firm intentionally. And this is something that I didn't really do 10 years ago because I didn't know what I was doing 10 years ago. But for anyone who's here now and who's starting now, this is a way for you and a time for you to start to build a firm intentionally about not just where you live, but who you're serving, how you want to serve, who you want to serve, and what that can look like in a way that might look a little bit different from the past. All right, so those are the two models. This is my summary here before we dive into the 5 pillars. I think we've learned something great in the past 5 years, that lawyering doesn't have to look the way that it has. There's some great things about the way that it's looked and some things that can be improved upon. And so I think that's a good thing. Remote practice isn't the future anymore. It's the new normal. It's the new normal. So we're all just learning together and figuring out how to navigate this new normal. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity. So let's start with the ethics and the compliance. This is the first pillar that I want to go over with all of you. And there's 3 ABA model rules that I think are relevant here. Rule 1.1, Rule 1.6, and Rule 5.3. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about those rules, and then I'm going to spend some time talking about the multi-jurisdictional practice limit and the physical presence misconception. For those of you on the call who are thinking, am I allowed to sit in Wyoming serving clients in Florida, right? Am I allowed to do that? So we'll talk about that as well. This is an important part of the presentation today. So I want to make sure that we take the time to go through this. Rule 1.1 is competence. A lawyer shall provide competent representation to a client. Competent representation requires the legal knowledge, the skill, the thoroughness, preparation reasonably necessary for the representation. They've added a note in comment number 8 in 2012, and I'm going to read that as well, because that comes back to the technology piece. To maintain the requisite knowledge and skill, a lawyer should keep abreast of changes in the law and its practice, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. Engage in continuing study and education and comply with all continuing legal education requirements. Okay, so that's the rule. What does it really mean? It means that tech competence is now a part of basic legal competence. It's just going to be expected that we know what the technology is that we're using in our firm, how it's used. We're talking about cloud storage, CRMs, client portals, all of that. You now, as a lawyer, have to understand how these tools impact your client confidentiality and your workflow. Okay, so this is not something that can be outsourced to your IT team. You need to understand this as part of your job, as part of your ethical duty to know the benefits and the risks of the technology choices that you're making. So that's Rule 1.1. Rule 1.6, this is the confidentiality rule. A lawyer shall not reveal information relating to the representation of a client unless the client gives informed consent. Okay, so we all know the confidentiality rule. How is that relevant here? That's relevant with communications, encrypted emails, client portals, strong passwords, two-factor authorization. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. That's how we keep our clients' information confidential when we're serving them remotely. It should be a whole topic in and of itself. This is just a very high picture overview. Everyone who's listening we can take, days on each one of these, but this is a high picture, high level overview. Rule 5.3, this is the responsibility regarding non-lawyer assistance. I pulled this one up because now we're also managing our staff, not really in person anymore, but almost entirely virtually. So this is the rule with respect to a non-lawyer employed or retained by an or associated with a lawyer, a partner, a lawyer having comparable managerial authority. shall make reasonable efforts to ensure that the firm has in effect measures giving reasonable assurance that the non-lawyer's conduct is compatible with the professional obligations of the lawyer. What does that mean? It means practically that this covers all of your remote paralegals, your remote virtual assistants, your tech vendors. You've got to supervise what they're doing, just like if they were in the office. You have to ensure that they understand the confidentiality obligations. Okay, that's your job. NDAs, written SOPs, etc. Choosing vendors that have privacy and security measures consistent with the lawyer's duties. Okay, so this is what Rule 5.3 is. You need to be covering and watching what your non-lawyer assistant people are doing, and you have to supervise their work just like if they were in the office. A couple of minutes on the multi-jurisdictional practice and physical presence myth. I don't know if this is much of a myth before as it was 5 years ago when we all were trying to figure this out. The applicable rule here is the ABA Model Rule 5.5 and ABA Formal Opinion 495, which came out in 2020. And the concern that we've been hearing from lawyers is if I move to another state, I'm not going to be able to work remotely because that's now the unauthorized practice of law. And it used to be a gray area, but it was clarified in 2020 by the ABA in Formal Opinion number 495, which basically says you are allowed to physically live in one state and virtually practice the law of another, as long as you're only serving clients in the jurisdiction that you're licensed. And you don't hold yourself out as a lawyer in your new state. So what that means practically, a Minnesota lawyer licensed in Minnesota, living in Florida, can keep practicing from her home office in Miami. And this used to be something that confused us all, and we were a little bit nervous about this. Am I allowed to practice Minnesota law sitting in Florida? And the answer is yes, you are allowed. You can't take Florida clients practicing Florida law or advertise yourself as a Florida lawyer unless you're actually admitted in Florida. And you also have to comply. Some states have local registration, advertising rules, etc. You'll have to look and see what the state rules are. But the bottom line is that you're allowed to live in one state and practice in another state. Just make sure that the state that you're living in, you're not holding yourself out or marketing yourself as an attorney in that state. Okay, technology and security. This goes in a little bit to what we've been talking about already. This is the second bullet point that I want to go over with everyone. And there's a lot of tools that we could mention, that we should mention. What I want to do is go through the tools that I talked to about with my 2-hour lifestyle lawyers who all have the same questions. How do I keep things secure? What system am I supposed to be using? What software should I be using? And how do I make sure that it all stays secure, etc.? So these are 5 concrete real world tools that you can use if you're thinking of practicing remotely. And the idea here is we're always comparing this to what it used to be like. In the office, everything was paper, everything was in file cabinets. We used pens and pencils, right? It's all different now. So we have to do the same things that we've been doing, but just in a secure way online. So these are things that you should have and you should think about because these are going to be things that make it easier for you to comply with those rules of the ABA. A CRM of some kind. I'm not promoting, by the way, any of these specific ones. These are just some common ones that everyone's heard of. A CRM is not optional. This is something that you should have. And in fact, your malpractice insurance might require that you have it. All-in-one cloud system to keep track of your matters, your billing, your tasks, your client communication. This is Locus, Clio. The trick here, they're great. They work really well. The hard part about a CRM is getting it set up. It takes a long time to get it set up. And that's something that you might want to work with a coach or someone on getting it set up, because otherwise you just end up paying for it and not using it. That's a separate issue. CRM, e-signature, you're going to have a way for clients to sign engagement letters, other documents virtually. Again, we used to do it in person. You sat down and you signed in paper. Now we're doing it virtually. So you need to have some kind of a DocuSign, etc. Online payments. You need to have a way to collect payments easily from your clients. They're not sitting next to you writing you a check anymore. They're not handing you a credit card across the table anymore. So there's different ways of doing this. Law Pay, Gravity Legal. There's a lot of different options, but this is something that you're going to need right away to be able to collect money from people online without seeing them in person. You have to be able to securely send client communications back and forth, whether this is through encrypted email or maybe a client portal. Locus, Clio, some of these other CRMs, Decision Vault is a software that I use in estate planning. They all have client portals. They make it very easy for you to both upload and download the documents that you're creating and any personal information that your client is sending you, but also to email back and forth. So that's something that you absolutely have to have as well. And then I would recommend some kind of a password manager. So this is going to be something like LastPass or 1Password. There's different ones out there. You can research the ones that you think are the best. But the idea here is we need to have a safe place where we can store all of our passwords, make it easy for whoever needs to get in, and everybody else stays out. So later on in the presentation, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how running a virtual practice is not really the same thing as just saying, oh, everything that I do at the office, I'm now just going to do sitting at home. It really changes the entire structure of your whole practice. And that'll be more clear as we get to the end here. But a big part of that is going to be having potentially a new tech stack, right? I love the expression tech stack. What is your tech stack? It might look different now that you're not sitting in the office, but you're working virtually. So that's what we're getting at here. Staffing and supervision, this is a really, really big one. You're going to have part of running a virtual practice, and part of what makes it difficult is that you no longer have someone sitting next to you at the office, right? And we worked a certain way when we sat in the office and we had someone sitting next to us. And it really was just a matter of kind of leaning over and helping someone or passing something, down the hall. It was very different. Now managing our staff and managing the people who are working for us, number one, we might be across time zones, different countries, right? Instead of having one assistant, what we mostly have now is 6 or 7, all who do different things. One who's really good at marketing, one who's really good at something else, one who's good at drafting. They're all working around the world. This is an important part of having a virtual practice, because even though your team might be virtual, you still have to supervise them. You still have the same ethical responsibilities that you had if they were sitting next to you. And this is a big deal because it's easier to manage someone who's sitting next to you than it is to manage someone who's halfway around the world. But you need to understand how to supervise these people, because again, we're always looking back to what are the rules that we have to follow. And we need to make sure that we're following those rules that we spoke about earlier. So for staffing and supervision, I want to dive into having clear systems, clear expectations, standard operating procedures. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about project management tools, and really formalizing communication and confidentiality. Just checking the chat. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to keep going. We will have time for questions at the end, everyone, so I'm happy to stick around. Let's look at the staffing and supervision. So procedures or standard operating procedures, hopefully you all know what this is. This is the backbone for your virtual estate planning law firm, because a standard operating procedure turns what's in your head into a repeatable system that your team can follow. In a remote environment, and this is key, so I want you to maybe even write this one down if any of you are taking notes. Clarity replaces proximity in a remote environment. Those of you who are old enough to remember, we used to be next to each other at work. Proximity. Everybody was in the same space. It's very different now. You don't have the proximity. You can't lean over the desk and say, oh, this is how you do it. So you have to have clarity. You got to have SOPs, make it crystal clear. This is now how you communicate with your staff. It's no longer leaning over the desk. It's having an SOP. All right. So that means every recurring task from engagement letters to uploading client documents, there's a million recurring tasks. If you do it more than once, you should have an SOP for it. And to the extent you can have someone else doing it, even better. So the SOP is going to be who's responsible, what tool is used, where do you store the work, where do you, where do you keep everything? We're trying to prevent mistakes. We're trying to prevent missed deadlines. We're trying to prevent version chaos. Okay? When multiple people are touching the same file. So having a standard operating procedure for everything that's done is, and maintained quarterly is the other thing that I would say is it's something that needs to be updated and reflected consistently. This is going to help you satisfy that reasonable measure standard in Rule 3.5.3. Okay, that reasonable measures standard. I'm taking reasonable measures to make sure that everything is done right. And one of the things that we're doing is we've got standard operating procedures that the whole team knows about. Now, as an aside, by the way, SOPs used to be kind of a pain. Everything was manual before. Now you would be surprised. AI really can help you basically just take what you're already doing and it'll do a really good job summarizing it for you into an SOP. We don't have a time for that today to go over that, but just know that creating an SOP oftentimes these days is simply as easy as just doing it once yourself. And then AI will maybe create a process for it that you can then share with your team. So this shouldn't be something that you should look at and think, oh, now I've got to go do SOPs for everything. Start documenting what you're already doing. What you already have to do today. Start documenting it. Okay, that's the beginning of your SOP. Okay. They're not just about efficiency. They're helping you scale, protect your license, and create a law firm that runs smoothly, even when you're not in the room. Project management tools. We've spoken about this a little bit. I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive. We're talking about Clio, Locus, Asana is another one, Lawmatics, Practice Panther. There's so many. But what we're really talking about here is, this is not optional. A project management tool is going to help you maintain control over what's happening in your firm, stay compliant, and it's going to help you with that clarity, the clarity with your staff and your clients not needing to be in the same room. So visibility creates accountability, and that's one of the nice things about a lot of these tools that we have. It feels in some ways like they're pushing us further away from our clients because these are all online tools and it's not the sitting down in the office that we used to have. And so I know that it can feel like I don't want to dive deep into these because this is all pushing me even further away from that connection that I want to have with my clients. But I don't think of it that way. I think of the more visible I can be for my clients and the more I can show them where we are in the process and how things are moving along, the more they're going to trust me and the more I'm going to be held accountable. And so these kinds of tools let you see what's being worked on, who's working on it, when it's due. We're not micromanaging. We're just making sure that stuff gets done so that we get the best possible service for our clients. Having everything in one place makes it easier to keep track. Makes it easier to know who's working on what. You want your communication to stay centralized and efficient. Again, we're getting back to these are great systems, they're great softwares. You have to set them up and you have to use them. So they don't just set themselves up. That's the hard part. But what you'll find is the firms that are profitable, the firms that are not running around like maniacs, the trick and the key is having a lot of this automated. And that means they've taken the time to set up their systems, to set up their workflows in a project management tool. And now that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them, which really frees them to focus more on really the client work. A nice way of breaking this up, I have so many things as an estate planning attorney that are automated. It's just kind of going off track, but I'm just looking at the clock and I see that we have time. Some things should be automated. A lot of things should be automated. Your email, your meeting reminders should be automated, right? Fill out your questionnaire. Here's the link. That should be automated. I automate so much of my estate planning practice, but I don't automate everything. I don't automate, for example, the design meeting. I spend a lot of time via Zoom with my clients. Via Zoom, it used to be in person, but now it's via Zoom, designing their estate plan. And this can end up being a very emotional meeting. And it can end up being, a meeting where you really bond with your clients. That happens and it works even though it's via Zoom. I take the time for that meeting because I know that they're really going to appreciate that. They're also going to appreciate that I'm not wasting my time sending out questionnaires and answering the phone, right? You want to kind of split out what can and should be automated and what do I really need to show up for personally. And that might be different for every practice area. I can speak to that for estate planning. I can't really speak to that for other practice areas. But I do know that everybody wants to be seen and heard, and everybody wants to feel like they've been able to speak. And it's going to be easier for you to do that with these systems in place and to free yourself up for that kind of counseling. So putting this all in writing, this should all be in writing. Every contractor, every paralegal, every person who you hire, you should have a confidentiality agreement, a data security agreement before they start doing any client work. This is going to set the expectations and it's going to legally reinforce your duty under Rule 1.6. Something else that you can and should be doing is limiting and controlling the access to what people can and can't see. So you want your team members to only be able to see what they're working on. And this is going to minimize the risk of them seeing something that they're not supposed to see, even in a cloud environment. And number 3, train and reinforce the ethical boundaries on an ongoing basis. You can't assume that your team knows the ethical boundaries. They almost certainly don't. So it's your job to teach them. What does this mean? Onboarding videos, checklists, on how to handle client conversations, how to securely maintain the client file, right? You're going to have to teach them. It's your job to teach them and to get it in writing because this is how you stay ethical, right? Okay, we're making good time. The client experience is something that I like to speak about quite a bit because it's something that I had to re-envision when I launched my practice post-COVID, right? So I did estate planning in person for 5 years pre-COVID. And estate planning is a practice area that is very, very personal. I always tell people, we had Zoom pre-2020, but it wasn't what I call socially acceptable. I would say to hire a lawyer via Zoom. We just didn't do it. It wasn't that we couldn't do it, is that we just didn't do it, right? And so nobody was hiring an estate planning attorney via Zoom. They came to the office. They had the initial consultation with me at my office. They had the design meeting with me at my office. They oftentimes would come back to my office to review the documents, and then they would come back to my office to sign everything. And so they got a whole bunch of time with me and my staff and my office. And that was how it was done, since the beginning. And that's really, really changed. And especially in 2020, 2021, when we all started to get used to this, there was a lot about this is going to be impersonal. I'm not going to meet my clients via Zoom. They want me in the room. They want me in person. That I don't necessarily think is true. Again, if you're the kind of lawyer who you love going into the office and you love meeting with people one-to-one, that's great. And there's going to be plenty of consumers who want that. But just know, if you're thinking, I'd actually prefer to do this virtually, it's not impersonal. And I, in fact, think of this as an opportunity to really create a more consistent, a more transparent, and a more accessible way of communicating with my clients that they're really going to value. And just as an aside, I have noticed that if you're, whatever your personality is in person, depending on what your practice area is. So for me, estate planning, warm, nurturing, understanding, sympathetic, you can convey all of those things via Zoom. You can convey them via Zoom just as easily as you can in person. I really believe that. I've not seen any kind of a downtick with that. So when you're using the right systems, remote practice is not really distancing you from your clients. I think it actually brings you together. This kind of environment removes barriers. So one of the best things about practicing virtually is that you are removing a lot of these barriers. Clients can meet you from home, work, vacation. I hope they're not meeting you on vacation or you're not meeting them on vacation. But the idea is we're removing a lot of barriers here. People don't have to carve out time out of their day to come to your office. They can meet you from anywhere. So that means it's going to be easier for you to meet with them, which means it's going to be easier for you to build trust with them. Okay. Flexibility, it shows that you're approachable, you're responsive. You understand their world. You're meeting them where they're at. Again, these are all opportunities to build trust. Okay. The trust doesn't go away. When clients can reach you easily, can schedule online, it shows that you're professional, you're organized, you're dependable. I'm always kind of surprised when I hear about lawyers who don't have any of this, this set up. The easy way to get in contact with your lawyer, the easy way to book a meeting, the easy way to just go throughout the process. In a virtual setting, accessibility is the new trust builder. Now, that does not mean that you're working 24/7. Okay, I don't mean accessibility is you are stopping everything every time a client texts you. That's not what we're saying. We're not talking about having no boundaries. That's a completely different situation. But we are talking about making it easier for you to do really good work. And the better work that you do, and the easier it is for you to do good work, you're just going to continue to build that trust. And as an aside, this isn't part of the conversation today, but with AI coming up and taking over, hopefully most of you are aware that we're now starting to be seen by AI the same way that Google used to see us. So as an aside, people used to go onto Google looking for an estate planning attorney near me who's great. And then whoever paid the most for SEO would come up to the top, right? This is how SEO worked. And it was all whoever got there first, whoever had the money to pay the most, and that was going to be the list. Well, AI is changing all of that. And so our clients are now going onto ChatGPT and saying, oh, who's a good estate planning lawyer near me? And how is ChatGPT coming up with their answer? Well, they're coming up with their answer by scouring the internet and all the different things that have been said about you. And then they're coming up with a recommendation. And they're going to recommend a lawyer who has transparency. It's the EAT acronym. Experience. Now I'm blanking on the second E. Someone want to drop it in the chat. I'm blanking on the second E. Trust and authority. Okay. So this is a long way of saying you need to be trustworthy and visible online, because that's how ChatGPT is going to identify you as a lawyer that's trustworthy, and then that's how they're going to recommend you. Sort of a sidebar there. So transparency through technology. You can keep clients in the loop, real-time status updates. They're going to trust you more and worry less the more they know what's happening. And it's going to be easier to keep them in the loop by having technology in place. Again, this is not the same thing as you working, 24/7. But again, these are opportunities. These are opportunities. So the last opportunity here, a personalized connection at the sale. I'm starting to see this, by the way, in all sorts of other industries as well. I went to buy a new car. I started getting emails from people who would record a short little video, from the dealership, or, if it's everywhere, realtors, right? Everyone's doing these little videos. And I've got down here, you've got Loom. Loom is what people are using. There's a lot of different softwares, but what we're getting at here is that these voice calls, these digital tools allow you to communicate face to face even more frequently. And they really do work. I didn't meet with the person who sent me the email about the new car, but I did watch the video and I did feel like, oh, I got to know, Brianna a little bit better, right? They work. It's a way to get in front of people. So sending short video updates, personalized check-ins, they show that you're attentive, that you care. This is how you build those lasting relationships in a virtual setting. Is everyone using Loom? I hope everyone's using Loom. Loom is something that I just put down here as a tool. There's others. This is probably the most common one. If you're not using Loom every day in your practice, you should be. And you should be using, in my opinion, ChatGPT every day in your practice as well. It's just phenomenal what it can do. Not for legal work, but for things like marketing, etc., marketing and stuff like that. Loom makes it really easy for you to create short videos or longer videos that communicate with your clients, with your staff, whoever. So you pull it up, you hit record, it records what's on your screen while you're talking. And this is a really great way for you to start to create SOPs for your staff and also to communicate with your clients. I teach my lawyers at 2HLL, instead of having a review meeting with the client, a live review meeting where you get on a Zoom and you review the estate planning documents together, instead of doing that, why not just record a video? Also, something we could have done before, but it wasn't really socially acceptable, I would say. This also was one of those ones that I would say was not as socially acceptable. They wanted a call with the lawyer. Well, now they're okay with getting a Zoom, or a Loom rather, a video that you recorded, you spend walking through the documents, whatever you need to tell the client, whether that takes you 3 minutes or whether that takes you 30 minutes, it doesn't matter. You just record it. And then you're going to send that to your clients and they're going to have that. Now, maybe they still have a question. Fine. Now you pick up the phone, but you've just saved a lot of time having them watch the video. Okay. So it reminds people that there is a human on the other side of all of this. They're not just getting our portal. They're not just getting our emails. They're going to get a quick 30-second video that took you 30 seconds to prepare, but that's going to be a really nice connection point. This isn't an interactive session. I wish that it were, because I'd be asking all of you right now, who's using Looms in their law firm? Okay, let's talk about something that's fun before we get to the very end here, the business models and the profitability. This is a lot of fun to talk about. I could talk about this all day, every day. Running a law firm, and I mentioned this earlier in the beginning, a virtual firm isn't just about taking what you did at the office and now doing it from your couch, which I think a lot of us, myself included, thought in the beginning. I'm just going to take what I was doing there and I'm going to do it from home, right? But I think what you're going to find is that there's more that's changing here other than just the logistics. There's more that's changing other than just the, where am I sitting, the geography, right? This might restructure your entire firm. And don't think of that as like something that you need to panic about. Think of it as an opportunity. How your firm earns money, how they deliver the services, how you scale. There's two things that I want to focus on specifically that are things that you could be doing, even if you were working in person. But I want to talk about flat fees and I want to talk about maintenance plans, just as two things that you might not be aware of, as a way, as something that lends itself very well to working virtually. Okay. But keep in mind, virtual means restructuring how you're earning, delivering, scaling. And so let's look at what that means. I'm a big fan of flat fee packages. Now, admittedly, these are easy for estate planning. I've never practiced litigation. I know it's different in some areas, but to the extent that you're in an area where you can offer flat fee, and I would say packages as well, flat fees and then packages that goes along with it. So we're talking about structuring your services into a clearly defined outcome-based package. This is important. Outcome-based. We want to get away from the billable hour to the extent that we can. I know we can't get away from it entirely, but to the extent that you can sell a clearly defined outcome, that gets you away from the billable hour. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we can do a revocable living trust for you. It's going to save you $50,000 in probate fees. My fee is $5,000. What number's bigger? 5 or 50? Okay, we're going to give you the outcome that saves you $50,000 in probate. I'm not going to tell them how long it takes me to draft the plan because that's not what I'm selling. I'm selling the outcome. Okay, it's easier with estate planning. I get it, but that's something that we should all be thinking about. Clients know exactly what they're getting. There's no surprises. There's no office meetings required. You're going to package this with online scheduling. Make it easy for people to book meetings with you. Automated onboarding. Our onboarding is automated. You booked the meeting? Great. Now you've got a questionnaire to fill out. I'm not sending questionnaires in my spare time. It's linked to the Calendly confirmation email. Okay? That's automated. I'm okay that that's automated because I know that by the time they get to see me at the client consult and then they're going to hire me and will see more of me, that they're going to get plenty of me and my counseling. But what's going to be automated is the onboarding. It makes sense to onboard that or to automate that, you guys. So a lot of it's going to be automated. The flat fees, the automating, this is going to be predictable revenue. If you know that you charge $5,000 for a trust, when you do 5 trusts next month, well, you do the math, that's $25,000. Plus the client experience is less stressful because they know what they're going to be paying for. Again, I know it's not possible in every practice area, but if nothing else, try to start thinking about how you can start to offer your services in a way that's not tied directly to the amount of time that you spend doing the work. See if you can do that. It's not easy, but to the extent that we can get away from the billable hour, I think that's what we're all trying to do. Did I do this for estate planning? Yes, I did. Oh yeah, so this is what we do for estate planning. This is just an example. We've got three tiers, just like when you go to the movies, right? You got your 3 popcorn tiers. Will plan, $3,000. A trust plan, $5,000. Tax planning, $10,000. My fee sheet looks very different from this, but just to give you an idea, this is what we're talking about with flat fees. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the subscription or maintenance model. This does all tie in, by the way, to the virtual practice that we're talking about. This kind of consistency, recurring revenue, having things be automated, just kind of tidying up or billing. Also, we can focus laser-like on providing 5-star service for our clients. That's always the goal, right? That's the end goal for all of this. So something that you should all be thinking about is potentially adding in a membership or a maintenance program. This is something that's very easy to automate a lot of this. But what we're talking about here is once you've served a client, don't just let the relationship die, especially, in estate planning. You tend to think you've done your will, you've signed it, moving on. No, you don't want to think that way. You're going to lose a ton of business down the road when they need help in the future. How do you keep them? Well, one of the ways that you keep them is by maybe offering a membership. Very quick example. As an estate planning attorney, maybe I've got a membership at $750 a year. Not a huge dollar amount, but it's something. You have 100 members, that's $75,000 in revenue every year. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to go out and get 100 members, right? There's some work involved here. But the point is, this is going to be something that A, separates you from your competitors. This is not a cash grab, by the way. You're offering something of value that people are going to want to buy. Some people are going to want to buy this. It lets them stay in touch with you. It lets you stay in touch with them. And you want to stay in touch with them because you want to be the first person they call when they have another legal problem. So it's revenue. It allows you to stay in touch with your clients. This is something that you can automate. A virtual assistant can do a lot of the heavy lifting. They can set a lot of this up for you. The things that, what you offer in a membership. As an estate planning lawyer, maybe you offer workshops that only members get to come to, maybe discounts on future plans, maybe they get a family meeting, maybe they get a newsletter, right? You throw in some things that are valuable to them and easy for you to provide, and it's a win-win. It's a win-win. The other thing that's going to be cool about this is that now your firm is more saleable. I just finished a coaching call with our 2 HLLs, and I literally said to them, I hope everyone on this call knows that you should be building a practice that you can sell someday. Because it didn't even occur to me when I first launched that was what I should be doing. If you're going to build your firm, you might as well build it so you can sell it. And having a membership program, if a buyer comes along and you can say, yeah, I've got an email list with 5,000 people on it, and I've got 100 people who are paying me $750 a year to stay in my membership, do you think that that's going to be attractive to a buyer? Yes, it's going to be attractive to a buyer. And now you've got a saleable law firm, and maybe that's going to kickstart your retirement. Okay, so these are things that lend themselves well to this new model. I'm almost done. I know we've got some time for questions as well. I just want to end this on a positive note, because we need more positivity, don't we? So let's just end this on a positive note. Looking ahead, the future of the virtual practice, I think the opportunity has never been greater. This is definitely a scary time, a lot of changes, but I don't think of this really as a compromise, like, oh, we have to do it virtually now. I think of this as an evolution. We're evolving into something that is going to maybe be easier for us, easier for our clients, and we're still providing that 5-star service. We're still doing great work. We're not cutting back on anything. This one is big. Efficiency and humanity can coexist. The future belongs to firms, in my opinion, that can blend automation and empathy. And the empathy part, here's the good news. We all have the empathy. We all know how to do that. We're all humans, right? AI is not going to beat us at that. So just like Dorothy, you already have what you need. I love saying that, by the way, because it's so true. We already have what we need. Let AI do what AI does, and that'll make us look like rock stars because they're making a lot of our lives easier. But you already have the human touch that you need. And to the extent that you're going to be able to continue to build that human connection, that's going to be what sets you apart in the future. Really, you can design your life with a virtual model by building a firm that really aligns your goals, your values, your lifestyle. It's one of the nice things about doing this. The future of law isn't about keeping up. I don't think it's about keeping up anymore. I think that we're all in a unique position that we can start to create what comes next. And I think that doing this virtually and continuing to have the great client service and implementing new things that are coming up that maybe we're scared about, but might open up a lot of doors. Some jobs will go away. Some ways of practicing law will go away, but other things will take its place. And so I think that this is an exciting time to be kind of poised for, okay, this is what we're doing now. Well, what can we do in the future? Maybe it looks better than what we already have. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity here. And I'm now going to open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Laura, for that wonderful presentation and all of your insights. We do have quite a few questions, so I'll just go ahead and kick us off. We have a question from James. They ask for any recommendations on resources that evaluate some of the tools that they might be interested in using. So he names e-signature options, video conferencing platforms, email options, VPNs, password managers. There's a lot out there, so do you know of any resources to kind of help them determine what might be the best fit for their firm?
Maybe start with ChatGPT. That would be my first answer. And then the other thing I would say, ChatGPT is great at that stuff, by the way, you guys. If you haven't done it yet, go in and just ask it something completely random. You're going to be shocked at what it produces. Start with ChatGPT. And then the other thing would be asking other lawyers, right? That's always a great way. Like, what are other people doing? To the extent that you're not in a community, whether, our 2HL community has got 600 lawyers. And so people come in and boom, those are the kinds of questions they ask. Find other groups, other lawyers to lean on to see what's working. Otherwise, I just start with ChatGPT.
Thank you, Laura. Our next question is you touched on multi jurisdictional practice, but this person asks, how should a remote firm document compliance with multi jurisdictional practice restrictions just to avoid any disciplinary risk?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I would try to document everything you're doing, document the SOPs, document everything that you're sharing. Just try to keep track of everything that you would want to keep track of, so you can show our overseas assistants are not, you know, accessing confidential records or confidential things. I would just try to document as much as you can, do all the things that you're supposed to do, and then document it just in case anything ever happens.
Thanks, Laura. Our next question is, how can a small firm balance affordability with those robust cybersecurity protections without overextending their resources? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, oh, sorry, the question went away. Can you put it back up? Oh, yeah, that's an reason. So I would say for that, insurance might be a good place to start. Like cyber risk insurance and that kind of a thing. I that's what I would start with, is looking at insurance. That's going to be an affordable way to kind of protect yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Our next question is, are malpractice insurers imposing any specific requirements that you know of that are on virtual firms specific to technology or security practices?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm guessing the answer is yes. I'm guessing the answer is yes. I don't know for certain, but that is something that you'd want to check with your malpractice insurer, just to make sure you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. And I'm guessing that they probably won't have any problems telling you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So that might be a good resource. Just speaking with your malpractice provider.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. This next question is about managing the firm from afar. So, this person asked, what systems or metrics do you find most useful for monitoring productivity and quality when you're supervising your remote staff?
Yeah, this one is tough. It is really, really tough managing people virtually. And there's one answer is that there are tools and resources that you can purchase for people to keep track of their time, to kind of monitor what they've been working on and show you how often they've been working, and whatnot. I have a slightly different model with my firm. It's less keeping track and kind of watching how many hours they're working in this and that, and really just kind of monitoring based on outcome and what I can see. So my personal preference, it really is, I'm just going to expect that you get the work done, and I'm going to expect that it gets done by the time it needs to be done, and I'm not going to micromanage. And then if the work isn't good, or they're not able to just sort of move along with that deadline, then what's the expression? Take a long time to hire, but don't take a long time to fire. There's some, if something is not working and someone clearly is not meeting the deadlines and whatnot, then you just need to find a new person. Which I know is not the easiest answer. I would measure based on outcome. Are they getting stuff done when they say it needs to get done? If that's the case, I don't really want to supervise you. I just want to know that it's gotten done. And then if someone is not, kind of meeting the deadlines, if they're not kind of keeping up, then I would just find someone else. But I get that it's a challenge. It's hard today to find good remote workers.
Thank you, Laura. Our next question speaks to client experience. So, this person asks, what client onboarding practices do you think work best when you're in a fully virtual environment and you're trying to build that trust from the start? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so what we do for our estate planning is, the onboarding actually isn't really that different from what it was in person in this instance. So instead of having, our client meeting in person, we would have it via Zoom, and then the process would be very similar. We would send via email instead of in person. We would send, everything goes via email, the engagement letter, the payment, etc. To build trust from the start, I think one of the best things that you can do, regardless of what practice area you're in, is to really kind of have a process, number one, and be able to explain that and move your clients through it easily, number two. So you can start building trust from the beginning with, here's what's going to happen at the consultation. That's a good example. When I invite people to a peace of mind planning session, which is my initial consultation, I have a whole handout that says, here's what's going to happen at the consultation. I made it on Canva. It wasn't difficult. It's nothing fancy. But you've got to remember, anonymous, whoever asked this question, you've got to remember most people have never worked with a lawyer, right? And so they've been to the doctor, they've had a professor, they've had a teacher, they've never worked with a lawyer, right? So to the extent that you can start building trust by, here's what's going to happen at the meeting, and here's when we're going to answer your questions, and here's what's going to happen at the next process. These are all, handouts and things that you can create initially. They don't have to be fancy, but just to walk people through that process so they know what's coming, I think is a really nice way to start to build trust. Just remembering that they don't know what's happening. You've done it a million times, but they've never done it. So that's a nice way to onboard, just to make the process really clear from beginning to end so they know what to expect.
Thank you, Laura, for that perspective. Our next question is about the membership model that you mentioned. So this person asks, how do you balance the membership model with ethics, opening and closing cases, and ensuring that clients don't think you represent them in everything based on that membership?
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to be really clear with the membership in your engagement letters and all of that. The initial, for estate planning, for example, the initial engagement has ended. This is not a continuation of that kind of a thing. That you want to really outline in specific, like what's being included in the membership and what's not included, so there's no confusion. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about the membership is that, assuming you do this right, you separate the liability. It allows you to keep in touch with your clients, which ironically kind of puts you in a position to keep track of things, right? So yes, there is a liability thing, and you want to make sure that they understand you're not helping them with everything under the sun. But there's also now you're a little bit closer to them, so you can make sure that things are staying, on track. So that's a good thing about it.
Great, thank you. And then our last question for today is about helping clients as well. So this person asks, how can attorneys ensure accessibility or modifications for clients that might have limited technology skills or internet access when you're connecting remotely?
Yeah, and this is an issue as well. Some seniors are not, online as much, et cetera. I think the nice thing about this is maybe you can have a family member help out. A lot of client meetings that I have with seniors, the adult children are on the Zoom as well. So that's a possibility. If someone wants to meet with you and you say we only meet via Zoom, and they say we don't have that, maybe ask is there an adult child who can help, et cetera. And then just understand that some people are going to want to meet in person, and if that's you, then maybe you have an in-person firm, and that's your kind of unique selling point. But for the elderly people, oftentimes what I'll ask is, do you have a friend or an adult child or someone who can help you with a Zoom? And that's usually what happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura, for that solution. And thank you for answering all of our audience questions. We really appreciate it. And thank you to you all who submitted questions. We always appreciate your participation. We want to thank you all so much for joining us for another Justia webinar. As I mentioned at the top of today's presentation, I would love to encourage you all to connect with us on social media. Those links are in the chat. Following us on LinkedIn and Instagram are great ways to stay connected with our professional community, join in the conversation, and see what's coming up for us, both with our webinar series and our product offerings. Thank you all so much for your time. Thanks again, Laura, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next video.